Well, I would just like to share with you today about my life before God came into it. It was way back in the 1970s. I lived in Corby with my wife and 2 children, and my lifestyle was really abysmal, to the point where the only thing I done was drink very heavily, and that had its consequences later on. And there was a time when I felt that my marriage was heading for disaster, and yet again not accepting that I had a problem, particularly a drink problem, and I had a bandit problem as well, the one-armed bandits. And I could see that because of my lifestyle, I could see that the marriage was heading for disaster. As I say, communication stopped. All I could think about was me, and I was right and everybody was wrong. So I decided that in order to save my marriage, I would look for another job, and I then got a job as a head caretaker in a junior and infant school in Rushden. And I'm sure you're aware, you've always heard that the grass is greener on the other side. For a few weeks things were a bit better, not much but a bit better, and the colleagues that I worked with, the headmaster and staff, thought I was a great guy, but unfortunately they didn't know the hurt that was happening indoors when the doors were closed. And it was really getting to a point where my wife, Nan, was finding it very difficult to put up with it. And it was nothing new for me to go to the clubs and drink myself silly. And I would be ejected from most of the clubs. And again, I had to get, excuse me, I had to get drink to oblivion. I just didn't care, and as I say, I was right. However, that went on for a considerable time, and because of my drunken behaviour, I was eventually barred from most clubs and pubs. There was only one pub I could get a drink in. That didn't stop me until one Saturday morning. My wife got the kids ready and went out, and I thought, oh, something wrong here. She didn't say she was going, and I thought, well, this is it. So I then decided, yeah, back to the pub. I went to the pub, and again I got just out my tree. And when I was fueled by alcohol, despite being a very small chap, and despite the fact that in work I was a great guy, I was a headache while I was drinking. I would do anything to cause eruption. And this particular afternoon, as I say, my wife went out, and I came back with my mates, and they were all alcoholics. And I came in, if I hadn't had enough, I went to the fridge and I got a couple more, and I was, I was in control, as I thought I was. The door went, and as I staggered to the door, I could see on the glass door, I could see what I thought was a police officer. And again, that was nothing new for me. I would many times been picked up with the police, and many times put a fight up. I wasn't going to leave the club, But this day it was a Salvation Army officer who is a minister in his own right. And he came in and introduced himself to me, and because I was so drunk, I became very abusive towards him, to the point I asked him to leave. My wife couldn't cope with this. She was so upset because I asked the captain to leave, and he went and he said to my wife, well, if Tom don't want me here, I have to step down gracefully, but if you need me, you know where I am. And he went. And then I became very angry to think that she should bring a manly cloth in. There's no way was I going to change. And I didn't have a problem. Everybody else had the problem except for me. And so I said, right, okay, you're not going to get away with this. Tonight I'm going to go back out as if I never had enough at dinner time. And that was me. I went back out and I don't know how I was served. I was really drunk. And I went into this pub and I'm saying that I'll teach her a lesson. And I don't mean by that, I don't mean that I would ever assault her, but I think I was going along the road is mental cruelty, and I think that's worse sometimes. So however, I left the pub and could hardly walk and everything else, and I get into my flat, and again the neighbours knew when I was home. They knew me before they see me, and I think that if anyone lived next door to me, I wouldn't be surprised with putting for a move the way I was carrying on. I get into my flat, the wife's in bed with the 2 children, and I thought, right, I'll keep my promise, I'll create a din. And I went to the radio and I turned the radio on full blast, and to my amazement, it wasn't pop and rock I got a religious broadcast equivalent to Billy Graham preaching, and in my drunken state I could hear them saying, God takes you as you are, and the way we start is at the foot of the cross. Well, God knows how he intervened in that, and I went to pieces and I am crying for help, and I don't know how I managed to contact the Salvation Army officer, the one I put out in the afternoon, but however I did, and I was thinking, well, he won't come back, you know, because he had enough at dinner time, but yeah, he answered the call. And as a result of that, the 2 of us were on my knees praying, and I was remarkably saved that night. It was so real. My wife came down after hearing voices, and she thought, oh, Tom's at it again, he's got his mates in. But you know, when she seen the Salvation Army officer back there and myself, it must have been quite a shock for her. However, I went to bed and I woke up in the morning, and I tell you, I had a head like part head. I had a real stinker off a hangover, and my wife says, well, I suppose you'll be going down the club as you do. And I said, no. I said, I'm going to Salvation Army. And you know, my conversion that night was so real to me, even the next morning. I went down to Salvation Army, and again, as they greeted me in and all the rest of it, I felt a little bit embarrassed because of what I'd done the night before. However, in the Salvation Army, they have a penitent form which one goes to speak to God. And I found myself there, again crying, but very much getting in tune with God. And that was confirmation of what happened the previous evening. I came home, and the following week I got a visit with the officer. He kept checking me up and that. And then as weeks went on, I went from strength to strength, and he said he believed that the best ministry for me would be the pub ministry. And I agreed to do that. And I went down to the pubs on a Friday night and to the clubs where I was barred from. And because I didn't have Salvation Army uniform on, when I went in, the steward and the landlords, they said to me, sling your hook. Sling your hook. And the Salvation Army officer explained, and you know, I took that ministry on, and I seen myself in many people, and I was going into that pubs and clubs for a very different reason. And the reason I was going into pubs and clubs was to bring a message that Jesus saves from the guttermost to the uttermost. And again, a couple of months up the line, I found myself in Salvation Army uniform. And when I went into clubs with the papers, that's the periodicals they take around, I felt really 10 feet tall. It was just like a thing that come away from me, and I felt good. Thank you, God, I'm going to make this, you know, I'm going to do good. So my mates seen me, especially when I was in Salvation Army uniform, and again you get the odd one that would say, oh, you'll be back next week, this sort of thing. And the more I went into these pubs and clubs, the more I was respected as a Salvationist and not as a drunken person I was before. I then was given a position which was band colour sergeant, and what that means is that you carry the Salvation Army flag in front of the band and you march down the streets. And you know, oh, God is good. That position alone, there was more things to happen, but that position alone made me determined that here am I carrying God's colours through the streets that I walked drunken, through the streets that I fell drunken, through the streets that I was arrested in. And you know, things just began to grow from there. The more I did it, the more God used me, and the more God used me, the more I wanted to do it. However, I received another position, Salvation Army, which was a League of Mercy Secretary. And what that does, it's a position where you help other people with problems. And I, many times over, was helping people with the same problem I had myself. And then I became an official hospital visitor in Rushden. And so that was great. Then after that, if God hadn't done enough, what happened? My family was saved. My wife went into uniform, Fiona went into uniform, and Robert went into uniform. And if that's not God working from that night onwards, you know, I'm a Dutchman, and we were having great times at home because it wasn't a drunken Tommy anymore. We were sitting, praying, reading the scriptures, getting loads of visits from fellow Salvationists, and you know, the atmosphere in that house was completely changed. As I was saying, that things were really good in Rushden, but it came a time when we decided that we'd move back into Corby, and all the Salvation Army activities were transferred over to Corby Coa, that is the hall. And I then applied for another job, and again, our marriage was sweet, it was great. I managed to get a security officer's job in a department store in Corby, and again, as time went on, a very active Salvationist and a very respected Salvationist and colleague in this department store. When it came to times where I would put my Salvation Army uniform on, go into work, and I'd find myself in the town chatting to the shoppers, and everything was going great. And because of my job, I was dealing with quite a few of unsavoury characters, if you like, something like myself before I got converted. And it was really, things were really going great, you know, and my wife and I were giving the glory to God for this. However, I think it was about a year on, because of my work, I had to work late. And on this particular evening, I asked someone to come and help me. Well, the person came, and I was downstairs, I was doing things, and I thought, oh, he's a long time. So I went to check where he was, and to my horror, he is there with being restrained by 2 security officers from head office. And I was horrified. I just couldn't believe my eyes. And so the police were called, and the guy, he was being arrested. And then I was told that I was being arrested also by association. And when that happened, my world just collapsed. Just collapsed. I couldn't handle it. The fact that I was arrested, and the fact that this guy helped himself. And of course, because I couldn't handle it, I needed counselling for weeks leading up to my court case. Well, time went on, and my court cases started. The guy, he got community service, and I got found guilty, and I was given a prison sentence. And when that happened, I wanted to do this person a great harm. But however, when I got home, I phoned up my daughter Fiona, who is also a Christian, and I said to her, in a flood of tears, I said, your dad is going to be going to prison. And she said, Dad, yes indeed, you will go to prison. And I was saying, where is this great God in all of this? Where is he? And she said to me, he won't stop you going there, but what he will do, he will be there with you. And you know, that was okay, her saying that to me, but I in my weakness, I didn't believe it. And I thought, how do I cope with this? And again, I go into the prison van, and reality started to kick in, and I'm arguing with my God. And eventually, I get to the prison. And when I got in there, it was terrible. And it's meant to be terrible, because it's meant to give you a little shock so you don't want to come back. And I went through that process. But you know, like every other prisoner that can't cope, I was carted off to the medical centre. And I was saying all sorts of things. I was saying that I wanted to take my life and that and the rest. And you know, in all of that, God came back to me and he said, be still, Tom, and know that I am God. And that calmed me down. And so I was waiting on my escort back to the wing, and again, God works wonders. The prison officer that came for me, she was a Salvationist. How good is that? And on the way back to the wing, I'm saying, how am I going to profess my faith in here when you've got every type of prisoner in there? How am I going to do it in that environment? And she said to me, Tom, she said, you've got a Bible, haven't you? I said, yeah. She said, well, what I'd like you to do, when you get back to your cell, I want you to open that Bible, and I want you to leave it on your table, and God will do the rest. And exactly that's what happened. I put my Bible on the table, and it wasn't long before my fellow prisoners knew that I was a man of God. And you know, shortly after that, the prisoner next door came in, And I learned that he had been in prison for setting fire to churches and for assaulting anybody that resembled God. And I thought, thank you very much, Lord. How am I going to deal with that one? And he said to me, he said, is that your Bible? I said, yeah, it is. He said, well, it's not going to be there for long because I'm going to set fire to it. Okay. I said, all right then, but I can assure you, as soon as you set fire to that one, there'll be another one in its place, right? Well, it must have been God giving me the right words to say, because things started to escalate in a nice way, where I was able to profess God in that environment. I used to start Bible classes in my cell. I would have 10 coming in the cell, and the rules say any more than 2, you're up to no good. But praise God, I was up to very good things, and it snowballed from there. And then I got a job in the prison in the servery, which means that you're serving fellow prisoners meals out, yeah? And my sense of humour, God has given me this. and I used to say to these guys, when they come up for a meal, I says, don't worry, it's on the house. The Queen will pay for it. And it was things like that, I believe, that made me have a good rapport with them. And then I worked very closely with the chaplain. And again, I became a listening ear, and that is equivalent to a Samaritan. And it was my privilege, really was, to go into prison cells and listen to their stories and be there. There was times when I knew not to even ask to pray, but there was times when I knew that's what I should do, and that's exactly what I'd done. And I was in a position in the prison, as I say, I worked closely with a chaplain, and I was arranging for all sorts of things to happen. And one of the events was a worship group came into prison, and the prisoners would go along, and the ones that were coming to the Bible study and the fellowship thing, they were there. And you know, I got permission to take control of the church area, where once, twice a week I would have a prayer session. And it was in that session that prisoners would come to me for prayer. And God just used me there, right? And getting back to this guy that was going to set fire to my Bible, etc., God opened a way for me to understand why he was so anti-church, you know. And I found out, as I say, being his listening ear, I got the full picture. And it gave me a better understanding, that I could understand why he wanted to set fire to things. And you know, it wasn't long, I think about a month later, it wasn't that long, that guy, I was able to lead him to Christ as well. And it just snowballed from there. I got bigger and bigger. I was even doing things, I really thought I worked there, to be honest. I believed that I wasn't a prisoner at all. I believed I was one there. The staff loved me to bits, and the prisoners loved me to bits, I believe. And as my sentence was nearly finished, I went round, actually the week I was finishing. I think I went round on the Monday, I was getting out on the Friday, and I went around all the fellow prisoners in that wing, and I was saying goodbye to them all. And one guy, I'll never forget this, one guy said to me, Tom, does being a Christian help you in your prison sentence? And I says, well, I can only say yes to that. I said, because I was like you. When I come through that door, I was terrified. But God opened the way. And so I said goodbye to the staff, and that was me being discharged, okay? So when I got discharged, I'm standing outside like any other prisoner, waiting on his relatives picking them up. And what went through my mind then was, Tom, you did great works in that prison, but it's reality time now, and you've got a criminal record. How are you going to get a job? And it was all this, and that was really powerful stuff that was coming to me. And again, God comes back again, and he says, be still and know that I'm God. Well, I was wondering who was going to speak to me. My ex-colleagues, you know, are they going to wash their hands off me? How am I going to cope? Am I going to go back on the drink again? All these things. And I nearly worried because when I got home and I then went for more counselling, I then was strong enough to deal with things. And we were sitting in the house, my wife and I picked up the paper, Evening Telegraph I think it was, and there was a job, hospital porter, okay? And I said to my wife, I said, I'm going to apply for that. She said, are you being stupid? She said, you've got a criminal record, you won't get it. I said, well, I'm going to apply for it anyway. And you know, again, as I said at the beginning of this story, God allowed me to come out of one trusty position and he put me in another one. That's how good this God is that I love and serve. And the counsellor went in for a session and she says, Tom, she says, you're going to be my colleague next week. Hey, what? You're going to be my colleague. And then I got a phone call saying I got the job. How good is that? You know? Spot on. And so I believe that my ministry is in the church that I belong to now, Hope Church, that I believe the ministry there is sharing my faith and being ready to help those that have the same problem as I had. And I just can't speak highly enough of this God. He's bionic sometimes, and he never lets you down. When he says he's going to change it, he changes it in his time. And if we can just quickly revert back to the night he came into my life, I didn't know that was going to happen, but he did, and that was great.